Narrator. Have you ever sat in a crowded, suffocating room, the air thick with aggressive debates and relentless judgment, only to realize that your physical presence has been entirely erased? Have you ever felt the crushing weight of being underestimated, labeled as a failure, a weakling, or even a disposable piece of trash, simply because you chose the profound sanctuary of silence over screaming to beg for their fleeting attention? If the raw, bleeding ache of that question resonates in your bones, then Wolf King Stories US warmly welcomes you to a psychological space designed specifically for the unseen. Experiencing the agony of being eclipsed in your own environment is not merely an isolated personal tragedy, it is a brutal socio-psychological phenomenon where deep, introverted souls are systematically crushed by the loud, the manipulative, and those who desperately hunger for superficial dominance. Before we delve into a story that will permanently shatter your perception of weakness and power, I urge you to hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is the vital heartbeat of this channel, giving us the fierce motivation to continuously uncover and analyze the hidden, mind-bending depths of literature that others simply overlook. Stay with me until the very final second, because the psychological revelation we are about to unpack will irrevocably alter the way you view your own inner strength. For far too long, mainstream pop culture, particularly within the dark and alluring realm of werewolf romance fantasy, has been aggressively chained to a highly toxic, sickeningly repetitive blueprint. Think about the psychological poison we are constantly force-fed. A profoundly fragile, submissive female protagonist who is relentlessly subjected to physical and emotional torment, paired with a male lead aggressively branded as an alpha. Yet, if we strip away the romanticized facade, this so-called alpha exhibits every textbook symptom of narcissistic personality disorder and the most venomous form of toxic machismo. In these archaic, suffocating tales, absolute power is measured purely by the sharpness of fangs, by domineering growls, by a pathological obsession with control, and by the complete, unapologetic eradication of a woman's autonomy. It meticulously crafts a highly dangerous illusion, a brainwashing mechanism suggesting that true love demands the absolute sacrifice of your self-worth, and that feral violence is somehow synonymous with passionate protection. But today, we are going to take a sledgehammer to that exact delusion. Together, we are going to dissect a literary phenomenon that is silently triggering a seismic shift across the entire genre. The breathtaking saga of Galilea Hawke and Alpha King Ambrose from Evelyn's Alpha Romance Library. Why has this specific narrative sent such a devastating shockwave through the reading community? Because it refuses to be categorized as mere entertainment. It is a masterful, razor-sharp psychological lecture on human behavior. It is the ultimate blueprint demonstrating exactly how a deeply wounded individual can weaponize absolute stillness and boundless intellect to flawlessly flip the chessboard, reclaim an untouchable sovereignty, and entirely rewrite their own worth. Galilea Hawke is no one's bleeding victim waiting in the shadows for a violent savior. She is the living, breathing testament to a chillingly beautiful truth. The moment you master the chaotic depths of your internal universe, you inevitably force the external world to its knees. Narrator. To truly understand the magnitude of this internal mastery, we must first descend into the agonizing reality from which Galilea's untouchable sovereignty was forged. Imagine existing in a space where your very heartbeat is considered an insult to those around you, a pack hierarchy so deeply corrupted by vanity and brute force that vulnerability is punished with sadistic delight. This is the suffocating world Galilea Hawke was forced to inhabit, a brutal ecosystem where she was systematically stripped of her dignity, relegated to the lowest rung of the social ladder, and relentlessly mocked for lacking the primal aggression celebrated by her peers. In any conventional werewolf trope, this prolonged exposure to systemic abuse would break the heroine, reducing her to a perpetually weeping shell whose only salvation lies in the sudden, violent intervention of a physically superior male. But this is precisely where this narrative violently derails from the cliché and steps into psychological brilliance. Galilea does not break, nor does she scream into the void begging for a mercy that her abusers are incapable of granting. Instead, she does something entirely terrifying to those who rely on intimidation. She weaponizes her silence. When you are surrounded by monsters who feed on your terror, denying them your emotional reaction starves them of their power. Galilea constructs a magnificent, impenetrable fortress within her own mind, retreating into a cerebral sanctuary where their insults dissolve into meaningless background noise. I want you to feel the profound weight of that choice. It is not an act of surrender, it is a calculated, deeply intellectual act of warfare. She meticulously studies her tormentors from behind the glass of her silent observation, mapping their insecurities, their predictable triggers, and the hollow fragility of their egos. Every time they push her, expecting tears, she offers them only a chilling, hollow stare, a reflection of their own pathetic cruelty. Her silence becomes a suffocating mirror. By refusing to participate in their barbaric game of dominance and submission, Galilea asserts a quiet, terrifying autonomy. She teaches us that when you are trapped in an environment designed to destroy you, your greatest rebellion is not to fight back with their crude weapons, but to completely detach from their reality, preserving the sacred core of your identity until the perfect moment arrives to strike. Narrator. When that perfect moment inevitably arrives, her transition from a silent observer to a strategic mastermind is nothing short of an absolute psychological masterpiece. Galilea does not suddenly develop miraculous physical strength, nor does she rely on a mythical, destined mate bond to magically solve her problems. Rather, she begins to dismantle the oppressive hierarchy using the devastatingly sharp arsenal of her intellect. This is the turning point where the story transcends the boundaries of fantasy romance and becomes a brilliant study in strategic subversion. She starts maneuvering the pieces on the board with such subtle, breathtaking precision that her abusers do not even realize they are being systematically isolated and exposed until it is far too late. Think about the sheer intoxicating thrill of watching an underestimated outcast use the very arrogance of her enemies against them. Galilea manipulates the political fractures within the pack, planting seeds of doubt, leveraging hidden truths, and pulling invisible strings that cause the toxic alpha structures to implode from the inside out. Her mind operates 10 steps ahead of those who only understand physical violence. When they bark in command, she anticipates and outmaneuvers. I felt a visceral surge of triumph reading these sequences because it validates a truth so many of us fiercely hold on to. Raw intelligence will always outlast brute force. She strips away the unearned authority of those who tormented her, exposing them not just as cruel, but as intellectually inferior and profoundly weak. She reclaims her narrative without ever having to mimic the toxicity of her abusers. This intellectual rebellion redefines what it means to be a powerful woman in this genre. She is not empowered because a man gave her a title. She is empowered because she claimed her own worth, forged in the fires of her own suffering, and utilized her brilliant, strategic mind to build an empire out of the ashes of her past. Galilea. You thought my silence was submission? No, I was just calculating how long your hollow empire would take to burn. Checkmate. Narrator. She proves that the most dangerous person in the room is never the one shouting the loudest, but the one who has quietly memorized every single exit, every weakness, and every secret while everyone else was busy trying to show off. Narrator. It is within the gravity of this newly established, terrifyingly calm sovereignty that Alpha King Ambrose is forced to confront a woman who fundamentally breaks every preconceived notion he holds about power. This is where Evelyn's narrative strikes its most fatal blow to the toxic machismo that has poisoned this genre for decades. Ambrose is introduced with all the terrifying prestige of an Alpha King, a man accustomed to absolute obedience, a conqueror who expects the world and the women within it to bow to his overwhelming aura. Yet, when he collides with Galilea, his feral intimidation tactics crash against the unyielding obsidian wall of her intellect. She does not cower, she does not swoon, and she most certainly does not seek his protection. The psychological dynamic that unfolds here is absolutely mesmerizing because we are witnessing the agonizing, beautiful unmaking of a traditional alpha. Ambrose quickly realizes that his fangs, his growls, and his titles are entirely useless against a woman who has already survived hell on her own terms. For the first time in his existence, he is deeply, profoundly out of his depth. He is not dominating her, he is terrified of losing her respect. Ambrose, what kind of creature are you? My aura makes armies kneel. Yet you look through me as if I am nothing. Galilea. Aura cannot fix a broken strategy, King Ambrose. You rule by fear, I rule by absolute certainty. Learn the difference before you challenge my board. Narrator. To stand beside Galilea, Ambrose must violently tear down his own ego. He must unlearn the toxic programming that equates love with possession and leadership with fear. The narrative brilliantly shifts the power dynamic, forcing the male lead to evolve, to cultivate emotional intelligence, and to learn the excruciatingly difficult art of truly listening to a partner rather than commanding her. He has to earn his place in her world, proving his worth not through violence against her enemies, but through his willingness to support her own strategic victories. This is the profound redefinition of the alpha romance. True masculine strength is not demonstrated by putting a woman in a gilded cage to keep her safe, but by standing shoulder to shoulder with a brilliant, formidable queen, fully recognizing that she is his absolute equal, if not his superior, in the glorious art of war. Narrator. Watching this magnificent, hard-won equality solidify into an unbreakable partnership brings us to a stunning realization about the true nature of power and the legacy we choose to leave behind. The breathtaking saga of Galilea Hawke and Alpha King Ambrose is not just a story you consume. It is a profound emotional experience that echoes endlessly in the quiet chambers of your own soul long after the final page is turned. It reaches directly into the chest of anyone who has ever been overlooked, marginalized, or made to feel deeply insignificant, firmly planting a seed of absolute, unshakable defiance. We are taught through this brilliant narrative that the scars left by systemic abuse and emotional neglect do not mark us as damaged goods. They are the architectural blueprints for a mind capable of unimaginable strength and strategic genius. Galilea's journey forces us to hold up a mirror to our own lives and question the spaces where we have allowed loud, arrogant voices to drown out our intrinsic worth. She demands that we stop waiting for external validation, stop hoping for a savior in shining armor to recognize our pain, and instead, step into the terrifying, beautiful responsibility of saving ourselves. This story permanently shatters the illusion that gentleness, introversion, and silence are synonymous with fragility. It replaces that lie with a monumental truth: the quietest minds harbor the most devastating storms. As we conclude this deep dive into Evelyn's Alpha Romance library, I want you to carry Galilea's sovereignty into your own reality. The next time you find yourself in a room where the air is thick with judgment and your presence feels erased, do not shrink and do not scream. Breathe into your silence. Trust the boundless depths of your intellect. Remember that you do not need to roar to prove you are a predator. Sometimes, you just need to patiently watch the board, move your pieces in the dark, and wait for the perfect moment to say, checkmate. Thank you for walking through this psychological labyrinth with me. Never forget the incredible, deafening power of your own silence. In conclusion, the saga of Galilea Hawke stands as a monumental paradigm shift within the alpha romance genre, completely dismantling the archaic tropes of damsels in distress and toxic, overpowering saviors. Galilea's evolution from a marginalized, abused outcast into a formidable strategic queen is a testament to the sheer, untamed power of the human intellect. By weaponizing her silence and refusing to engage with the crude brutality of her oppressors, she constructs an impenetrable psychological fortress. She does not conquer through physical dominance, but through calculated, brilliant maneuvering that ultimately forces those around her, including the terrifying Alpha King Ambrose, to evolve or perish. Ambrose's own journey of tearing down his deeply ingrained toxic masculinity to stand beside Galilea as an equal brilliantly redefines true strength. Together, they illustrate that a profound partnership is forged not in dominance, but in mutual respect and emotional intelligence. The story leaves an indelible mark on its readers, reminding us that true sovereignty is never handed down by an authority figure, it is painstakingly claimed from within. Galilea's triumph fundamentally redefines empowerment, teaching us that the most devastating power does not reside in the loudest roar, but in the quietest, most observant minds. This masterpiece challenges us to honor our internal resilience, flipping the chessboard on anyone who dares to mistake silence for weakness. The most profound lesson we can extract from Galilea's journey is that silence and emotional detachment are not acts of surrender, but weapons of profound strategic autonomy. In a world that constantly demands our immediate reaction, true power lies in the pause. How to apply this to your life today? When you find yourself navigating a toxic workplace, dealing with a manipulative individual, or facing unwarranted hostility, resist the urge to fight fire with fire. Aggressors feed on your emotional reaction, denying them that reaction starves them of their power over you. Instead of arguing or defending yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, retreat into your own mental fortress. Observe their behaviors, note their patterns, and focus your energy entirely on your personal growth and strategic goals. Let them exhaust themselves with their own noise while you quietly build your reality. You do not need to announce your every move, simply observe, plan, and let your undeniable success be your checkmate. Have you ever experienced a situation in your own life where choosing silence turned out to be much more powerful than reacting or speaking out? Please share your thoughts and stories in the comment section below. We would love to read your perspectives and create a space where everyone can learn from each other's experiences. If you found value in this deep dive, please hit the subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and gives us the incredible motivation to keep creating high-quality, thought-provoking content for you.